FNAF, Chapter 1, Episode 1, Rebirth. It all started with an 18-year-old girl traveling through a forest on October 31st, the exact night of Halloween, in 2022. She asked her parents if it was okay for her to explore in the forest. They said yes, but as long as she doesn't go too far away, so that way they can be able to see her and know where she is. She said okay, but then little did she know that she wasn't really paying attention to where she was going, and she soon found herself lost in the cold, windy, and creepy forest that was dark. She was a bit scared, but then she got even more scared and had goosebumps on her arms when she heard sizzling noises. Not just any sizzling noises. She heard like sizzling knives, like rubbed sizzling knives being rubbed together as well. She looked around and saw a man standing right there as well. He looked like he was 40 years old and asked her, "Hey kid, how old are you?" he asked. She looked at him like nervously and said, "Well, first of all, I'm not supposed to talk to any strangers, and second of all, that's a personal question, don't you think?" She asked, as the murderer looked at her and said, "Oh, come on, I'm no stranger to you, don't you think?" But then Gigi noticed a bunch of red flags on him. He had those knives sizzling together, so that's what's causing the noise, she asked herself as her thought. She looked at him and said out loud, I'm just gonna go back home," she said. She turned, but then she felt a grab on her hand, and she felt herself getting pulled as well. She was screaming with complete terror and telling him to let her go, but he did not, and it remained silent. By then, she found a rock on the ground, a huge rock. She grabbed it, and it was heavy, but she didn't care. As long as she was going to get away from this creep, then that's all that matters. She grabbed it and used it to smash this man's face very hard. After that, she ran. As she continued to run very fast, she heard the screams of the man from a far distance, saying, "Oh, you freaking brat! I'm gonna kill you! I'm gonna kill you!" he said, as she continued to run faster and faster, which seemed like from seconds to minutes, and from minutes to hours, and from hours to God knows how long. She continued to run away until she realized that the man was no longer following her. She sighed in relief, but then, little did she know, that was far from over. She felt a sharp pain on her chest, and she felt like that she couldn't breathe at all, and she saw a knife stabbed through her heart. And she looked behind her and saw the same exact man that was following her. "Do you think I'm gonna get away with what you did, huh? Do you think you're gonna do that, huh? You freaking brat." After that, he pushed her to the ground and kept stabbing her multiple times until she was on the ground unconscious. Once that happened, he immediately ran off, having this psychotic laughter of victory when he left. All of a sudden, the Jackal Bunny plushie that she had in her shirt started moving as if it was alive. It started moving and rolling until it got away from the body. It formed into this nightmare, weirdish, hellish, living jack-o'-lantern animatronic rabbit known as Jackal Bunny. Jackal Bunny looked next to him with complete terror. His own owner slaughtered in cold blood by a psychotic man that looked like he was 40 years old on the ground, bleeding with a bunch of stab wounds on her body. He picked her up as well, crying tears of melted wax, candle wax, from his face. He shrieked with despair of pain. After sobbing for what seemed to be hours, he noticed a blood trail leading to an unknown direction. But that was when he followed it and found the exact same man that killed her in the forest. With complete rage and complete anger, he rushed to him and eaten his body up all completely and swallowed him whole. After that, he went back to Gigi, carried her body, and went back to his friends. He went back to that pizzeria place that he was in and found Dreadbear there. Turning around and seeing everything in complete horror, he rushed to them and said, "Oh my gosh, Jack O'Bonnie, what happened? Why does her owner have a bunch of stab wounds on her body?" he asked, as tears streamed down his face, and also he was angry and completely shocked at the same time. Jack O'Bonnie looked at him and told him about the murder that happened and what he did to the murderer. Trevor looked at him and said, "To be honest, good riddance, because that guy was terrible, and I bet that guy would be living in hell right now, thinking about what he's done," he said, as they both looked at Gigi's body with complete despair as well. Jack O'Bonnie asked, "What are you going to do now, Dreadbear?" he asked him. "Because I don't know if she's going to make it or not," he said. "And if we go to the hospital, and if the doctors see us, then they're going to think that we did this to her," he asked. As Dreadbear looked at him and said, "I don't know. I don't really know, because we don't have any parts at all to help her. Or we don't know where to go, and if we go to a hospital, then we're just going to get yelled at and get dragged away by other people," he said. But then Jack O'Bonnie looked at a mask that Gigi made and picked up from the ground that he dropped while he was on his way there, and had a good idea and looked at Freddy, which is Dreadbear, and said, "Well, Dreadbear, I've noticed this mask that Gigi made on the ground, and I realized that this can really help her. It's made out of hard solid, and pretty much has a smile on the face. And she called this mask the Crip Core. That's what she called." Trevor looked at him confused and said, Crip Core?" Jack O'Bonnie looked at him and said, "No, Crip Core." Dreadbear looked at him and with understanding and said, "Oh, now I get it. Crip Core. Yeah. How many masks of these are there?" he asked, as Jack O'Bonnie told him, "Well, 3. A colorful one called the Color Core, and one that's exact opposite of this one, known as the Cryptor, which is the companion of a character idea of her own. She pretty much is a creative person," he said, as Striper looked at both him and Gigi impressed. And that was when they both realized that they exactly knew what to do. They take Gigi to a strapping bed where Draper was first brought to life by a mad scientist. Well, maybe. Nobody knows for sure yet. And that was when he started to use his mystical power to study the mask and bring it to life. Once he did, the mask started moving his face out of emotions. Once that happened, he put the mask on Gigi's face as well, and started using the electricity on the bed, and used the switch. But before he did, he looked at Gigi in her stabbed state, her injury state, one last time, and said, "Don't worry, young lady. Soon enough, you're going to be okay." He switched the lever, and all of a sudden, the electricity started taking complete form and merged the mask together with Gigi. Gigi started shrieking in pain, Dreadbear feeling very terrible about the fact that she felt pain, but he knew at the same time that he needed to do what he needed to do to help her. After everything, the mask formed along with Gigi, forming her own body, forming her skin from actual normal light colored skin to black, turning the color of the costume that she had into a cloaky kind of like in black colors clothes, and turned her brown hair into black hair. After the final transformation on the feet / shoes, including her shoes too, turning them completely black and pitch black with white edges as well. Threadbare flicked the lever and stopped the machine. He realized that Gigi is alive again. Well, still alive, but shivering with complete shock on her sleep, and she's probably having a seizure as well. Tripper looked and calmed her down as well, and started carrying her as well, and started making sure that she was okay. Tripper looked at her and said, "It's okay. You're safe now. You're safe with us, as part of our group," he said, as Gigi's body began to shiver like before that, but then calmed down. Once she calmed down, he brought her to a resting place, a bed, and also tucked her as well. Jacoboni came in and saw that Gigi's body has completely changed from being a normal human being to an actual different person, like her own mascot. After that, Jacoboni was completely shocked and said, "Draper, what? Did it work? I can tell it worked." Draper looked at him and said, "Yeah, but I don't know how her family is going to react to her now, because since we saved her from her life from death, but in a way that no one's ever seen before, we don't know if anybody's going to be happy to see her or be terrified," he said, as Jacoboni looked at her with like feeling bad for her and said, "I think it's best that she lays low here for a while until she goes back to her family again, and adjusts and tells them about the fact that she's alive and is doing well," he said, as they both looked at her as well and decided to give her a break and let her rest. After that, one of their other friends, Foxy, came along and asked, "Hey, Threadbare, Jacoboni, who is this girl, and why does she have a mask on?" They turned to her, and Threadbare said, "Well, Foxy, let me explain. This girl was murdered by a psychotic man, and pretty much I had to do what I had to do to make her like save her life, but unfortunately she is now part of our group," he said, as Foxy looked at Gigi and said, "Well, why doesn't she look like an actual animatronic?" he asked, as Threadbare looked at him and said, "Well, that's because we don't have any spare parts at all. And besides, she made a mask of her own that's out of hard metal and hard solid. And pretty much we use that as an advantage to save her life," he said, as Foxy looked and said, "Okay then, but what about her family? How they gonna react to her then?" he asked, as they both looked at him and told him, "Well, I think it's best if she lays low with us for a while and play it safe, so that way nobody like sees her in the beginning and think wrong about her or try to kill her, because none of us want her to get hurt again at all, like she had in her previous life," Jacoboni said, as Threadbare looked at him and said, "I agree with Bonnie here, because I don't want this girl to ever be judged because of her new looks," he said, as Foxy looked at her, feeling bad for her now and saying this, "Yeah, I think it's best if she lays low. I agree." After that, they all decided to let her rest as well and continue to do their usual routine of entertaining children on Halloween night, until she woke up and realized that her body was completely different, and was looking around, and she realized that she was in a different area, not in the forest. And she asked, "Who's there? Is anybody there?" she asked, but no response, except when she saw Foxy coming through the door, saying, "Oh, you're awake." But Gigi, she looked terrified at this living animatronic that spoke to her and screamed. Even Foxy screamed too, and both Dreadbear and everybody heard both of them screaming while performing to the children on Holy Night. "Did you hear that?" Bonnie asked Dreadbear. "Yeah, it sounds like Foxy and Gigi," Dreadbear said, as they both told the children, "Okay, kids, it's time for us to take a quick break for right now," they said, as the children were like, oh man, I want to see them do the magic tricks or something," they said. As they both rushed over and saw both of them both Gigi and Foxy completely terrified each other, Bonnie asked, What the heck happened here?" Foxy looked at him and said, "I don't know. She looked at me in complete terror and screamed at me, and I screamed back," he said, as Gigi looked at all of them completely terrified and asked, Who are you guys?" She told. After that question was asked, Dreadbear looked at her and said, "Well, let me explain." After explaining to her about everything that happened, she was completely shocked as well, and she had tears coming out through the mask to her new face, which is her homemade mask, and said, "I can't believe this. How could someone do this to me?" she asked, as Dreadbear looked at her and said, "Look, I am very sorry for what happened to you. Yeah, I really am. And since you're a part of our group now, I think it's best that you lay low for now until the right time comes for you to finally reunite with your family," he said, "including your friends," Bonnie said, as they both looked at her, feeling bad for her as well. And Gigi, looking at them, at first was hesitant, but then realized that she was completely new and wondered that if her family and her friends, including her classmates, like with her new friends in school, will ever recognize her at all because of her new looks. And told them, "Yeah, I think I could agree with you guys too," she said, as she realized that Bonnie looked very familiar, and said, Do I know you? Because you look very familiar to something that I have." Bonnie looked at her and said, "Yeah, basically I'm the plushie that you had in your shirt with you during that night in the forest, which is today at night." She looked at him and said, wait a second, so this whole entire time my plushie was alive and that is you?" Bonnie looked at her and said, "Yes, that is true. That is completely true. After everything, a new friend of theirs, well, not really, they got used to her, another friend of theirs known as Jacko Chica came in and looked at all of them and saw Gigi over there and asked, "Hey guys, but who is that seemed to be a human girl?" she asked, as Foxy looked at her and told her everything that happened to Gigi, and Jacko Chica couldn't help but to feel sorry for Gigi and to agree that it's best for Gigi to lay low in their group for a while until she reunites with her family again, including her friends and teachers and others that she met along the way. End of part 1.